Town Square Media Station, serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got 'em!
WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Tuesday edition of Game Night, 97.3 ESPN FM. Yes, we are live on YouTube and Twitter at 97.3 ESPN. And of course, download the free 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Listen to 97.3 ESPN wherever you go. And of course, you can DM the show directly through the app as well. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Wow, what a day. You know, you wake up this morning and you think Ben Simmons might speak to the media today. And then you're led to believe that Ben Simmons is going to speak to the media. And then all of a sudden, Ben Simmons goes absolutely out of total disregard for anyone but himself. According to reports, doesn't want to go into practice drills. And then Doc Rivers tells him, get out. Leave. You don't want to be here? Don't be here. We'll see you tomorrow. So then guys like Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid have the unenviable task to run up there and just start dealing with the media who's looking for questions. They're trying to do their job. I thought that Joel Embiid, his comments were amazing today. And we'll get to those in just a moment. But the Ben Simmons saga continues, and we'll get into it as tonight is opening night in the NBA. It's a shame that this man-child, Ben Simmons, is overshadowing the debut of the defending NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo, his coronation moment tonight versus the Nets, because Ben Simmons is a child. But that's where we're at. And Bryan Toporek, who has been along for the entire drama saga with us here on 97.3 ESPN, he will join us coming up at 6:20. Bryan Toporek from Forbes, sports NBA writer, as well as co-host of the NBA podcast. He'll join us at 6:20 tonight. And of course, you guys can join the conversation as well. You can text in 609-403-0973. Again, on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. And, of course, 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Before I get to anything that anybody said, I got to lay out the ground rules here, all right? The ground rules is this. We can trash Ben Simmons. We can question Ben Simmons. Fans can hate on Ben Simmons. But none of that changes Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is who Ben Simmons has and always will be. It doesn't matter what angle you're attacking this on. The reality is that Ben Simmons is a child in a man's body. He has been handed most of everything he's got in his life. Ben Simmons has had a very nice life for the most part. And everything that has been quote unquote difficult in his life, the majority of it has been his own fault. He's the one who agreed to do the documentary that exposed him to the entire world. He's the one who every time he gets questioned about, hey, Ben, why don't you do this? What about getting about your game? He brings up his resume. Ben Simmons is the one who lets things off the court impact his professional life. Now, some things are out of your control, okay? You know, and I understand the ESPN story is out there that, you know, what happened to Ben Simmons' sister and the whole family saga, all right? But Ben Simmons has chosen not to speak on that. So I am not going to allow that to be part of the conversation either. I can only speak to what Ben Simmons has done and will not do. And part of that is Ben Simmons will not speak for himself to anybody. We have not heard from Ben Simmons at all. Not one thing on social media, on TikTok or Instagram, no actual words coming out of his mouth. And Mike Gill played this audio earlier today on the Sports Bash. This is the last time we heard words come out of Ben Simmons' mouth was the Game 7 post-game presser when Chris Franklin from NJ.com asked him this.
Hey, Ben, toward the end of the game, there were a few chants that were going out there asking trade Ben Simmons, stuff like that. Do you feel like you played your last few minutes here in Philadelphia?
I feel like we just lost game 7. That's about it.
Right. Would you like just to remain in Philadelphia?
Pardon?
Would you like to remain in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, I love being in Philly. You know, I love this organization. The fans are great people. I mean, I had a bad series. I expect that. It's Philly.
That's the last thing Ben Simmons has said. That did not sound like an individual who was going to hold out. That didn't sound like someone who was going to put their foot down. It didn't sound like someone who was today getting thrown out of practice because he refused to get involved in a drill. And Ben Simmons has laid his own bed. Because as ESPN Adrian Wojnarowski said, Ben Simmons' behavior is part of the reason why he's still in Philadelphia.
It certainly complicates trade talks around the league. It complicates Philly's ability to go out and find a deal. They were nowhere near a trade for him. They wanted him to play. They wanted him to honor the contract. And so far, that's not happening in Philadelphia.
Ben Simmons has created his own problematic situation. He has not handled it well. He has been a child through the whole thing. And I heard someone try to suggest to me previously that Ben Simmons, this is a mental health issue. And I'm going to just say I am not going to give that weight either, because we live in a world now where a lot of people bring up mental health, but they don't fully understand what that term means. So let's not project on the Ben Simmons things that we don't know about. But what I do know is what Joel Embiid said today. Because the complete opposite of Ben Simmons is the superstar that Philadelphia deserves. That's Joel Embiid. Take a listen.
Like I said, he just got suspended. His attitude based on whatever has been reported, I'll let you guys read into that. I have nothing to say about the matter. It is not my problem. I get paid to, deliver, and that's to win games, and obviously the ultimate goal is to win a championship. And like I always say, I can't do it alone. I need these guys, and the guys that are here are willing to help me, and I'm willing to help them, and we're going to continue to grow together.
That's a real NBA superstar. That's a man right there. That's someone who understands what it takes to be great. Someone who had to earn his keep, who had to work his tail off to get to where he is now. Ben Simmons is not Joel Embiid's problem. Joel Embiid doesn't want to talk about Ben Simmons. He doesn't want to talk about what did or didn't happen in practice. He doesn't care. Joel Embiid went on to say this.
But at the end of the day, our job is not to babysit somebody. We get paid to produce on the court, go out, play hard, win some games. That's all we get paid for. We don't get paid to come out here and try to babysit somebody. And so that's not our job. And I'm sure my teammates feel that way. So we really focus on just winning and playing as a team. The main thing for us is to have fun, and I think we're going to have that a lot this year.
He's not here to babysit anybody. Joel Embiid's a professional. Joel Embiid's not here for soap operas. He's not for dramas. He's not interested in being part of the latest TMZ story. He's here to play basketball. He's here to do his job. It doesn't matter the reasoning why Ben Simmons is where he is or why he's acting the way he is. What matters is he's doing it. And it's unacceptable and it's unprofessional. And Embiid is showing you exactly what it means to be a professional and what it takes to be a star in a big city like Philadelphia. I don't care if Ben Simmons wants to go somewhere and be allowed to make mistakes without being criticized. I don't care if Ben wants to live in California so he's closer to his social network. I don't care if what's going on with Ben Simmons. His reasoning. How he's handling himself is unacceptable. Period. End of story. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. You can send a message into the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Also, the text board is open, 609-403-0973. And, of course, we are live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. And this saga isn't going away until Ben Simmons gets traded. But Ben Simmons has sabotaged his own trade value through his play, through his attitude, through everything else. The Sixers want to win a championship. But they're not going to win a championship by trading Ben Simmons for some random player that some of you may be able to find while playing NBA 2K or running the NBA Trade Machine Simulator. Daryl Morey wants to make this team better. He wants to win a championship. Daryl Morey came very close to getting to an NBA Finals with the Rockets. Doc Rivers has not been back to the NBA Finals in over a decade. These two men did not come to Philadelphia to deal with Ben Simmons and whatever's going on in his life. They came here to win. And that's all they're going to focus on. That's what they're going to do. And so at the end of the day, Joel Embiid is right. Ben Simmons is not his problem, and it should be the Sixers' problem either. And until Ben Simmons accepts personal responsibility for things, this is going to be his predicament. He made this bed. Now he has to lay in it. Coming up on the other side, Forbes Sports NBA contributor Bryan Toporek will join us to talk more about the Sixers situation and the opening night of the NBA season right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. I'm Josh Hennig, and this is Game Night.
The NBA's opening night on ESPN Radio. The Brooklyn Nets at the Milwaukee Bucks. Coverage begins tonight at 7 Eastern. It's the NBA on 97.3 ESPN, your exclusive home for the NBA Finals.
38. Eagle fans, Baldy on the mic to introduce you to a new solar team of EMT Solar Roofing and Solar Guardians. Need a new roof? Want to go solar? Have solar but need to upgrade your roof? They're your solar team no matter your football team. Visit ESPNSolar.com to stop getting sacked by high electric bills. EMT Solar Roofing and Solar Guardians. One click, one team, one solution. Start saving thousands today at ESPNSolar.com.
It's game time. Football season is in full swing, and you can catch all the NFL action at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here. We'll get to some of your messages a little bit later in the hour. Keep them coming in. Of course, you can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Of course, text board is open, 609-403-0973. And right now, live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. To get more into the Ben Simmons drama, as well as, tonight is NBA opening night. So you would think that, we'd be talking about Giannis and the Bucks coronation, but no, Ben Simmons apparently is such a man-child that he had to upstage the entire NBA today to the point where Adam Silver had to answer questions about Ben Simmons on national television. So the joy of talking more about it is Bryan Toporek. He's been here for the entire Ben Simmons ride, saga, whatever you want to call it. Bryan, how you doing today?
I'm tired, Josh. I am tired of this entire thing, and I just want it to end. Well, I'm doing well otherwise.
You're not the only one. I think everyone is at this point, because the point where Embiid said is not his problem today to the media. And to me, that's where I want to start, Bryan. I wrote about this earlier on the website at 97.3 ESPN.com. Embiid is the superstar Philadelphia deserves. He's everything you want this guy to be. And Ben Simmons is the complete opposite. And at some point, I don't understand why half the world gets the problem here. But the one person who doesn't get the problem is Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons does not want to admit that he has a problem, Bryan.
Yeah, I mean, he's said as much in the past where he's not the type of person who he needs that someone to push him. So Doc and Embiid finally did at the end after Game 7, and then he responds like this. So I'm not convinced he knows what he wants at this point. I mean, I think the most convincing thing and the theme that's come up, Kyle Neubeck of Philly Voice reported this recently, and then Ramona of Shelburne of ESPN. And I think there's probably some validity to it. This idea that he felt he didn't have as much room to make mistakes as a typical number one overall pick because he went to a team. If you win the number one pick, more often than that, you're a bad team and you're probably going to be in a small market. You're not going to be under a glaring spotlight right away. So you have time to work out these kinks early on. So I think he felt pressure to, kind of paper over his weaknesses and just emphasize his strengths and didn't feel like he could really grow his game. I would just challenge that by saying, the Sixers have been encouraging him to grow his game and to, famously Brett Brown asks a couple of years ago, take one 3-pointer after every game. He says, I want one 3-pointer. So it's not like the Sixers were saying, we don't want you to do these things. They wanted them to. And you have an entire 82-game regular season where the stakes don't really matter that much, especially if you're that good of a team, right? Like, you're going to make the playoffs either way. So as the Bucks proved last year, this is the time to experiment and try new things and figure out what works and doesn't work. And we just haven't ever really seen that out of Ben Simmons. Outside, last year he tried developing a hook shot a little bit, but all of it went away in the playoffs.
Right. So how much all right, let me redirect this a little bit, because something you said was very interesting there. You mentioned the fact that, they tried to push him. Brett Brown asked him for things. He hasn't responded well to these things. So if you're another NBA team, why are teams still calling about him? Why do we have 8-9 teams in almost every single report? Woj, Shams, fill in the blank NBA reporter says there's about 5 to 9 teams calling about him. So if Ben is such a problem in Philadelphia, how is it that Ben is still in demand by other teams?
You know that meme with the record player that says, does not work, but it would be fun to fix? I think that's how other teams are approaching Ben Simmons right now, where they can talk themselves into saying, okay, maybe the fit with Embiid is not perfect, and we don't have a Joel Embiid who's going to be soaking up post touches. So maybe we can do the Ben plus shooters lineup that we have seen work in Philly in the past. So that's one thing. I think secondly, Ben Simmons in the regular season and Ben Simmons in the playoffs are two very different players. When teams aren't as locked in defensively in the regular season, he can get away with a lot more than what he can do in the playoffs when you're cutting down on transition opportunities and you're playing more in half-court settings. So if you're a team like Cleveland or Minnesota, Sacramento, that you're in a prolonged playoff drought and your only goal is to get back to the playoffs, you're going to say you're trying to build a championship contender, but realistically, not every team actually is trying to do so. Some teams are just happy with the 45-win ceiling and a first-round playoff berth. So Ben Simmons could be very helpful for those teams. It's just the teams that actually hope to win a championship, that's where you have to question the fit until he shows that he's willing to really work on the weaknesses that have plagued him so far.
Bryan, at the end of the day, whenever Ben Simmons does get moved, and for whoever he gets moved for, is there a part of the league that's just going to be like, is it just going to be, we're glad it's over? Or is there something the part that's like, well, you could have gotten more, or you should have gotten this, or you should have done that? Because there's a part of me that looks at Philadelphia fans, and it's like, some of them, they're just never happy, Bryan. They're just, no matter what happens, like Joel Embiid comes out and says what he says today, and they're just like, well, what's Embiid supposed to say? And I'm just like, what's Embiid supposed to say? He could have said anything else. He literally said, he's not my problem. I'm not a babysitter. I'm here to win. In Philadelphia, we have guys like Bryce Harper, the guy's hustling his tail off. People are still not happy with him. Like, unless you get like Kevin Durant in return for Ben Simmons, there's a part of me that wonders, Sixer fans may be saying now, get rid of him, we'll take a bag of basketballs, but 6 months from now, they'll be like, come on, you could have gotten more than this.
Right. I mean, and I think that's what Daryl Morey is trying to navigate here. I mean, all the consistent messaging coming out from the Sixers side is we are trying to get a star in return for Ben Simmons. We do not want role players. We don't want young players. We don't want draft picks. We have a star in Embiid right now who's in his prime. He's in his win now window. We want a guy who can come in and compete right away. The problem is that those guys just aren't out there yet. I mean, the hope, dating back to the offseason would be Damian Lillard gets frustrated in Portland, given some of the stuff that was coming out about him over the summer. But he just said today, he's like, I'm not asking out of Portland. So, Bradley Beal is the other one in Washington because he could be a free agent after this year. But all indications are that he's happy there. He wants to stay there. Zach LaVine's another one. He can also become a free agent, but the Bulls just upgraded so much this offseason. You have to wonder whether he's going to ask out. So there just doesn't seem to be an obvious star on the market or a guy who 10, 15 games into the season is going to become available. What Morey is banking on right now is, maybe a team like Sacramento or like Minnesota feels pretty good about its outlook going into the season. But if you start 3-12 and you slip out of the playoffs right away, and you're saying, oh, okay, maybe this core isn't working. That Sacramento doesn't want to trade either De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese Halliburton right now. But if they get off to a slow start, does that stance soften? Does Minnesota entertain including D'Angelo Russell or Anthony Edwards would be the dream target there? Cleveland, are they willing to move Darius Garland? Or, we could also see some guys break out who might not seem like star prospects now, like a Darius Garland or like OG Anunoby in Toronto, where if they get off to a great start this season, all of a sudden you could say, okay, well, Mark Stein of Substack floated the idea today of OG Anunoby and Goran Dragic for Ben Simmons. And if that's on the table, I don't think it is. But if that's on the table, that's something you should just do right now.
Bryan Toporek joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, co-host of the NBA podcast, NBA contributor for Forbes Sports, joins us the opening night of the NBA season. Before we get to the rest of the NBA, I got to ask you one more question about the Sixers stuff, and that is, you mentioned, like a deal like that, OG Anunoby, Goran Dragic. Joel Embiid made the comment today that he needs help, and he's going to help his teammates, and he looks for them to help him. The guy no one's really talked about this offseason, who's going to play tomorrow night next to Embiid, is Tobias Harris. How big is this season for Tobias, considering, one, he actually makes more money than Ben Simmons. Number two, he's a guy who was super clutch for them in the regular season, but seemed to fade in that Hawks series. And the third thing is, Tobias Harris isn't old. It's not like he's like a 33, 34-year-old vested veteran. This is a guy who is still supposedly either in or entering the prime of his career. So how important is this season laying on the shoulders of Tobias?
Yeah, it's huge for him. I mean, you don't pay a guy that kind of money and not expect all-star caliber production, which the Sixers did get out of him last year, to his credit. He didn't make the all-star team, but you could make a very convincing case that he was one of the bigger snubs from the all-star team, or exclusions, I guess. Without Ben Simmons, like we still don't know what's going to happen here, right? He's been suspended one game. We don't know if he's going to play Friday or play next week, whatever. But for however long he's out, the Sixers offense, they're going to need some other ball handlers, because right now Shake Milton's hurt. So it's Tyrese Maxey, who is not a natural point guard. And then they just don't have another ball handler on the roster. So Tobias, I think, is actually going to be an important bridge in that regard, because we saw when he was with Doc under the Clippers, he was actually pretty effective as a pick and roll ball handler. So I think we're going to see more sets like that out of him, where he's going to be running the half court offense, which we didn't see as much last year because the ball was going through Ben and Joe so often. So I think, the Sixers offense is still going to run through Joe on more possessions than not. But I would expect to see Tobias in particular get an uptick in touches, and it wouldn't surprise me, especially if Ben's not playing and forever long Shake is out, if he turns out to be the primary second unit ball handler.
Bryan, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum from Ben Simmons is this guy named Giannis,
Yes.
who, I tweeted this earlier, to me, the best book of 2021 is Miran Fader's book about Giannis. If you don't walk away either inspired or want to go buy a Giannis jersey after reading that book, you don't have a soul, okay? And to me, he's the complete opposite of Ben Simmons. And tonight is his coronation. And he's doing it against the prohibitive favorite in the Eastern Conference. And we're going to air the game here on 97.3 ESPN coming up at 7 o'clock, Bucks versus Nets. Are we overlooking the Bucks?
Absolutely. They're my pick to win it all this year, and that's doing in part because we don't know what's happening with Kyrie Irving. We don't know if or when he will play for the Nets. So if you tell me the Nets are fully healthy in the playoffs and have Kyrie, I would take them. But given the uncertainty, I think that title is going to be so big for the Bucks because now they can just play more free. They don't have that giant 800-pound gorilla sitting on their shoulders of, is Giannis actually happy in Milwaukee? Is he going to pull what Ben Simmons is pulling right now with, sign a contract that a year later want out? No, they know that what they did last year worked. They have the pieces to actually win it all as is. They only got deeper this offseason with the additions of Grayson Allen, who they just signed to a contract extension. Rodney Hood, our old friend George Hill is there. Shemi Ojale. So Dante DiVincenzo is coming back. He missed the whole playoff run last year. So they're deeper. I think Giannis, what we've seen out of him this preseason, looks like he developed a jumper this offseason. And if that's the case, it's game over for the rest of the NBA. You can make the case that he's going to be the best player in the league right now. He's my pick for MVP this year as well. So I think you have to go into this season thinking it's one of the Nets or the Bucks. Not only is the favorite in the East, but I'd say they're probably the two biggest favorites to win the whole thing.
When you look at the Bucks as well, and no offense to the Nets, I understand the Nets did make some legitimate roster improvements. They kind of pulled a little bit like LeBron used to do in Miami with like the random dudes who everybody was thinking about maybe getting, but they actually got them kind of roster. But at the end of the day, to me, my problem with the Nets has always been, Bryan, and I pounded this table last year, and I stood on that soapbox until the soapbox let me go. But I got to see the Nets actually complete a season and a postseason healthy. I don't know, even if Kyrie does come back at some point, when was the last time he played a full season? Kevin Durant, he's been injured multiple times in the last several years. James Harden, the guy plays himself into the ground. The dude's an animal and a freak, but at some point, even his body breaks down. None of these guys are getting younger, Bryan. How much of the Nets' concern is the fact that their small window is actually smaller than they're even willing to admit?
Yeah, and especially if Kyrie doesn't end up playing for, part or most or all of the regular season, that's going to put more on Harden and Durant during the regular season, which is when you should be trying to preserve those guys. You want to probably try to limit their minutes as much as possible. So I think it's a fair concern. We saw last year, they got to the second round, KD's healthy, and then Harden gets hurt, and then Kyrie gets hurt later in the series, and Harden comes back, but he's on one leg.
Right.
The fact they took the Bucks to Game 7 despite being without Kyrie and with Harden looking like a shell of himself is probably bolsters their case for why they could win the title even without Kyrie. But yeah, if Durant goes down, that's probably all she wrote for them. So you don't want to wish injuries upon anyone, of course, but it's something you at least have to, factor in if you're projecting preseason favorites.
So what then is a reasonable hierarchy of the Eastern Conference? We have the Bucks, we have the Sixers obviously still out there because of Joel Embiid. You have the Nets, the Heat. I'm not fully sure what they are right now until I see them because they added Kyle Lowry. The Hawks, they look good, but not that good, I guess. I don't know fully how to describe them at this point. They're a very young team. I think that Bradley Beal is the only one who thinks that his team is a contender in the Eastern Conference. And I got to be honest, I think the Knicks are going to miss the postseason this year.
Ooh, interesting. The play-in tournament as well, or they'll just lose in the play-in?
They can get to the play-in, but that'll be it.
Okay. Well, I'd say in terms of overall hierarchy, Bucks and Nets are clear 1, 2 in whatever order we want to put them, and there is a massive gap between them and anyone else in the East. I'd put Atlanta and Miami in that next group. I'm actually very high on the Hawks this year, and it could just be after seeing what they did to the Sixers last offseason, or last playoffs, but they only got deeper with the additions of Sharif Cooper and Jalen Johnson. A lot of their guys are young too, right? Like Trae Young's only going into his 4th year, John Collins 5th year, Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter 3rd year each. And both of those guys missed a lot of time last season. So especially in the playoffs, like we didn't see a fully healthy Hawks team. They got 2 games, within 2 games of the finals. So I think they're a clear top 4 seed. Miami is interesting because they are also one where, the depth is very thin. So I like the top 6 or top 7 guys. I think they have a more championship equity in terms of like I trust them in the playoffs, assuming they get through the regular season healthy. But if one of those big 3 go down, they could be in trouble as well. It's impossible to say where the Sixers fit into that. Like with an engaged Ben Simmons, I would put them in the Atlanta Miami tier, or if they trade Ben Simmons for, whoever, you'd probably put them in the Atlanta Miami tier. But until we see how this situation resolves or how long it takes to resolve, I just cannot in good conscience call them a top 4 seed. So I'd throw them in with, Boston, Chicago, New York, I think are all in that 5, 6, 7, 8. And then, Charlotte, Toronto, Indiana, Washington, there are going to be 2 good teams that miss the play-in tournament.
Yeah, it's called the Knicks.
The Knicks, and then like the Pacers have a lot of injuries right now, so I'm worried about them between TJ Ward and Karis LeVert. I think the Bulls are getting a little bit slept on. I know the concerns about their defense, but I think all of those pieces together offensively are going to fit very well. So I actually think they're probably one of the better bets to finish in the playoffs, but I could see them finishing as a top 6 seed as well.
Yeah, I think Lonzo Ball is going to have a monster season with Billy Donovan, because Billy Donovan, for some reason, has this like touch with guards. I don't know what it is, but it's like every guard he coaches somehow turns into like this, like, whoa, what happened here kind of thing. So to me, you take Lonzo Ball from personally, I think the Pelicans are like a dumpster fire at this point. So you take him out of that situation, you put him in Chicago with other dudes, you know what I mean? And it's like, you give him Billy Donovan. I just think the Bulls are going to be so fascinating. I don't know what to do with the Celtics, because I love Tatum and Brown. I love the tandem, but I don't know what Udoka is going to be able to do with a roster that isn't very deep, Bryan.
Yeah, and I mean, Al Horford's out right now because he tested positive for COVID. Jaylen Brown, I think he's questionable for the season opener tomorrow, but should hopefully be back soon. I think our lasting impressions of Horford, having seen him with the Sixers, I think it's going to be, we'll see a different Horford in Boston, because he was actually pretty good in OKC last year. They just shut him down because they wanted to tank. So I like, the depth up front between Horford, Robert Williams. They have Enes Kanter back there as well. I think the concern with them is the playmaking. It's Marcus Smart, Josh Richardson, and Dennis Schroeder, and you have Peyton Pritchard in there as well. There isn't like a clear 7-8 assist guy among them, but I think you're going to have a lot of the offense running through Tatum and Brown, so it's probably not a huge concern. Assuming health, I actually think the Celtics are going to be pretty good, unfortunately, because there's a rule that either the Celtics or the Sixers are dysfunctional. Only one of the teams can be dysfunctional every year. It was the Celtics' turn last year. Unfortunately, it appears to be the Sixers' turn this season.
And also Schroeder's playing for another contract. So, he's going to be motivated to go out there and actually be a good team player so he could re-hit the market and go get that bread, as the kids call it nowadays.
Yeah, he's got a bag to make up for.
Exactly. Bryan Toporek at Toporek on Twitter. He is the co-host of the NBA podcast. He is NBA contributor for Forbes Sports, and he joined us right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Bryan, the Ben Simmons saga continues, but there's no Sixers tonight, so we can enjoy basketball without it for at least one night.
I'm looking forward to it, and please let the saga end soon.
Bryan, take care, my friend.
You too. Thanks for having me on, Josh.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to your thoughts and comments on the other side as we wrap up the show right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
That's the shot, the three, swing.
The Sixers travel to New Orleans to face the Pelicans. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's play-by-play home for the 76ers.
You take care. Anthony. Good. We got to do this tomorrow. Yeah, definitely.
It's game time. Football season is in full swing, and you can catch all the NFL action at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Wrapping up the show here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. You could DM the show. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Also, we'll get to your texts in just a moment as we wrap up the show here. As promised, I'd like to get to you guys before we get out of here. John from Collingswood chimes into the show. We're talking about a lot of Ben Simmons, the Sixers today. He says, hey, Josh, I can't figure out what a realistic return we could get for Ben Simmons with all the antics. What are your thoughts? It's from John in Collingswood. John, a couple of things. One, I think that what Bryan Toporek brought up is a kind of a groundwork. The idea of an OG Anunoby and a Goran Dragic kind of deal. You know, with Malcolm Brogdon signing the contract that he did with the Pacers, he's off the market. He can't be traded because of NBA league rules. So, you know, I don't know if the Pacers would still be in it. To me, what's going to happen, John from Collingswood, is, and I've said this multiple times, and I'm going to stick with this opinion. I think that Ben Simmons gets traded in a 3 or 4 team deal. Kind of like what happened with Harden. You're going to see multiple pieces go multiple places. Remember when the Sixers traded Andre Iguodala, all the teams and all the players were involved in that deal? It's going to be a similar concept to me. I don't think that we factor in enough about what Bryan Toporek just said a few minutes ago. When we get about a month into the season, when October turns to November, November turns to December, and now you have 4, 6, 10 weeks into the season, there's going to be a team that panics. There's going to be a team that gets desperate, and they're going to start calling the Sixers and calling other teams and saying, we got to do something. We got to salvage our season. And remember, every year that December 12th, December 15th deadline comes, once you get past that deadline, league rules say you can trade players who were just acquired that offseason. I think Ben Simmons gets traded sometime between the middle of December and the trade deadline. And it's going to be a situation with guys like Goran Dragic and OG Anunoby, maybe Karis LeVert. You know, guys like that are going to be all a part of a deal like this. I don't know who the quote-unquote star player the Sixers get in return for Simmons is going to be per se. But I think at the end of the day, they get something in return that will be better than people expect, but maybe less than what Daryl Morey originally hoped for. One more message that came in from Tom over there in Margate says, Josh, I texted this earlier. What Ben did today, get rid of all the plans. He is now a huge cancer on this team. You either don't trade him or you sue him and sit him. Let him rot. That's from Tom in Margate. I'm kind of piecing together what he said. Listen, I can't disagree about the problem that he is a cancer. I think Ben, like I said, he's made his own bed. He's dug his own grave. He's done it to himself. You know, people can use all kinds of excuses they want about what goes on in his personal life, about how he grew up. But you know what? If we're going to hold John Gruden to this, you know, unspecified standard of he can't speak a certain way in public or in emails, and that got him fired, then why can't we hold Ben Simmons to standards as well? And if Ben can't live with that, then, you know, maybe basketball isn't for Ben. Maybe being in the public eye isn't for Ben Simmons. The guy you all should love is Joel Embiid. Another one is Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's coming up next on 97.3 ESPN FM. Opening of the NBA season, Bucks Nets tonight. I'm Josh Hennig. Have a great night. Catch you tomorrow.